Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City building and code consulting firm here in New York City. Today, I have the privilege of having Marc Landow of Landow and Landow. Marc,
how you doing?
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
So, as we start every show, we always believe in the power of people. And lo and behold, I ran into Marc about a year ago at a networking event for BizDevel. Marc is an attendee. I'm one of the members. And we started chatting. Long history. Worked with Marc's dad back in the day. Architectural firm specialized in a lot of healthcare. And we did a lot of great projects together. We ran in. And so thanks for coming on board. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I'm glad you took the time out because coming to the show does take time out of our busy day. So today I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about, where we were, where we've come, and where we're at today in the healthcare world. And mostly, I guess some of my questions today have changed in the healthcare industry because back in the day when I worked with your firm, they were private. And there was a group of people that ran one or two homes, and they were very loyal to the Landows. They were very loyal to Design 2147. But today, big businesses come in and bought these nursing homes and assisted living, and they've changed the way the work gets done and how much money funnels in. So tell us a little bit about where we were and where we are today.
So I'm going to go back even further than before we met.
Okay.
So as you mentioned, or maybe didn't mention, we're a third generation architectural firm.
Wow.
So my grandfather started the firm in 1922.
Wow.
My father joined him in the early 60s. I joined in the early 90s. And then my brother and sister, who are my partners today, joined just after I did.
Okay, so hold on a second. First question I got to ask is, how did your mom and dad figure a way to get three siblings into a business together, and what do the three siblings do in day-to-day at Landow and Landow?
So first of all, my mother had nothing to do with it. She's the only not-architect in the building. And the worst thing for her at the Thanksgiving table was we were talking about work, and she had nothing to do with it and no interest in talking about it anyway. When my brother, sister, and I, Robin and Glenn, were young, and I don't want to say my father pushed us into the business, but when your kids are in school and they start to do homework and you put a desk in their room so they could do their homework, my father bought the three of us drawing boards. And that was back in the day when you actually drew with a T-square.
With a T-square, right.
And we sat up on stools, like drafting stools. So maybe he kind of pushed us in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
I got into it very early. My high school actually had architectural classes.
Like me.
And I tried it and I loved it, and that was it. I was done.
You were hooked.
I was hooked.
Yeah, like me.
And my brother and sister, similar, but maybe a little bit later to the process, and then fall in love with it. But for me, it was day one.
Now, is everyone designing? Everyone doing the actual architectural profession? Because everybody thinks that if you work at an architectural office, everybody's a designer, but that's not true. You got to run a business. You got to promote your business. You have to manage your clients. You need to manage the staff. So tell me a little bit about the dynamics of having, your siblings together with you in your business.
So we're probably a little unique. And we certainly got this from our father, but he was involved in all aspects of the business. There are, like you said, many architectural firms where there's a design partner and there's a salesperson,
right,
and there's the business guy who runs it. Cohn Peterson Fox is famous for that.
Correct.
And became very successful because that trio really worked well and each had their role.
Had their niche.
Yeah, we're different in that we all do all of that. So we're all involved in business development and sales. We're all involved in designing our projects. We're involved in managing our projects, and we're all involved in managing the business. And we do it because we love it.
Right.
If we were just interested in the business part of it, there's probably other businesses we could have gone into.
Right.
But we like designing. We like bringing in the work. We like being involved through construction. And we like the relationship with the clients.
That's great.
So we each have our niches within the business and the different project types we do. Robin, in addition to being an architect, is also an interior designer, so she does a lot of the interior design in the firm. But we each are involved in all aspects.
Well, listen, to maintain a business for 102 years, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, we're proud because usually the first generation starts it, the second one builds it up, and the third one screws it up.
Or
So
or
far,
sells it.
So far, we're pretty good. Yes,
That's
we're
right.
doing all right.
So here we are. You know, your siblings are with you. You're in this business, and you know, whether we like it or not, it's funny how being in the business for 38 years, I think of a firm and you think of what they do. And I'm sure what I think Landow and Landow does was because of the relationship I had with your dad and the relationship I have with you, which was healthcare. But I am sure that if we were to go to your webpage and we would look and we would see that you're probably doing some incredible high-end apartments, you're doing healthcare, you're doing offices. So, but on the healthcare side, because that was a big part of our business and still is, we started the question off about the old days of working for a group at an assisted living place and where we are today in a corporate environment of assisted living. And if I'm wrong, I want you to tell me about it. But that's kind of when we get proposals and RFPs now, it's not because we knew the director of facility for 20 years.
Yeah, the industry has unquestionably changed. When my father started in the nursing home business back in the 60s, the reason he did it is because nursing homes then were not regulated, and a typical nursing home was a house, and the wife was a nurse, and she took care of half a dozen elderly people, and the husband maintained the building. And in the 60s, New York State changed the law, and nursing homes needed to be licensed. They needed to be fire-rated buildings. They needed to have eight-foot corridors.
They had to be safe.
They had to be safe, which made a lot of sense. And my grandfather read an article about this in a newspaper, and he turned to my father and he said, "I will find the business. You learn everything you need to know about designing nursing homes." And
here we are.
Here we are, 60 years later. We're still doing nursing homes.
Absolutely.
The nursing home industry has unquestionably changed. When we worked together on nursing homes, most of them were not-for-profits.
Correct.
Not-for-profit nursing homes, privately owned. They put a tremendous emphasis on patient care.
100%.
They had staffs, they had social service departments and nursing directors and assistant directors.
We did Menorah together in Brooklyn, and I always remember going there and meeting with Gary, who was a wonderful man.
Yes, he was.
And the non-for-profit part of it, the way that they were able to get grants, the way they were able to get funding, how they were very, very specific about the needs of the people. Yep. And when we went there and we would have our meetings there, it was never depressing to me to go to a nursing home because it was so beautiful. It was on the water. It was immaculate. The people genuinely cared about everybody. And, you know, as an architect, we go in, the building is a big part of making people feel comfortable, but the concept of people taking care of other people is really what makes the nursing home.
No question about it. And the not-for-profits put all of their emphasis in the care of the people that live there. And they received their reimbursement from the state, and whatever else they needed, they raised through fundraising, and they had generous donors. So the buildings were beautiful. We were fortunate. We've designed 3 nursing homes on the water in New York. So we did Menorah that we worked on together in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, Manhattan Beach in Brooklyn. We did Shorefront Jewish Geriatric Center right on the boardwalk in Coney Island, and we did Cabrini of Westchester on the Hudson River. All not-for-profits, and
beautiful.
I'm proud to say they're beautiful facilities. Like
they are amazing.
The problem that's happened is that as reimbursement rates get cut by the state, it's very hard for the not-for-profits to stay in the industry.
So what's actually happened? The non-for-profits are selling to
corporate? They're all selling to for-profit entities. Sometimes they're corporate. Sometimes it's a family-owned business that owns multiple nursing homes. They do a good job, but their emphasis, and we work for them, and they're good clients, but their emphasis is...
Well, it's a different
mindset.
Different dynamic.
Their emphasis is on making a profit. They take very good care of their residents, but it's a business to make money as opposed to a not-for-profit who has a different mission, especially the ones that are religious-based.
And back in the day, those non-for-profits, there was money available to them. And then at some point, it got tougher and tougher for that. And the way the demographics are today, even in our own families, unfortunately and fortunately, the fortunate part is that people are living a lot longer.
They are.
And they need more square footage everywhere to take care of people in assisted living or in a nursing home or a hospice, and yet the funding has gone down.
The funding has gone down. There is unquestionably, and not for a bad reason, there is an emphasis on people keeping people at home as long as you can,
Sure.
and providing home care services as opposed to putting them in institutions. So the population, even though we are living longer and people are
They're
they're
not
more
using the
elderly,
homes as
they
much.
don't. There's not necessarily a need. There is also a tremendous problem in the industry in staffing, finding
Right.
people now, and it's a post-COVID problem, but finding nursing staff to come and do. And God bless these people and what they have to
Oh,
do to take
without
care
a
of
doubt.
residents in a nursing home. Finding people to show up at an office or an institution 5 days a week, 8 days, 7 days a week. It's very hard to
Well,
do.
because it's 24-hour
It's
around the
24
clock.
hour, there's multiple shifts, but there are so many other remote job opportunities, technology, internet related, social
Sure.
media related jobs for young people. They don't need to do that anymore. So we have some nursing homes that are not fully occupied purely because they can't find staff. And if they don't meet the minimum staffing levels, they can't take on the
No,
residents.
it's funny that you bring that up because I have a twofold question. Well, the reason why I find it funny is that a friend of mine owns a restaurant here in Williamsburg, and I go there and I call him up and I say, I need a reservation for 4. Sister, don't worry about it. You know, I got you. And I'll go there and we'll sit down, and half the place is empty.
Yeah.
So I go over to him. I said, Italian place. I said, Nino, you telling me you got no reservations? He goes, Sister, I have the cook. I have the food. He goes, you pack this place in, and we have no service, and people are getting cold food, and Andre, they'll never come back. He goes, so not only am I paying for the brick and mortar, not only could I put out more dinners every night, I can't get people to work. And what ends up happening is my wife, my kids, my cousins are getting calls at 5 o'clock after school to run down here to try to help us. So we stopped overbooking. We can't.
And what happens is we get frustrated as customers because we go into a restaurant, they tell us there's a wait to be seated or there's no reservations, and we wait and we wait and wait.
And you're
And
watching
they
it.
finally take us into the dining room and there's a half a dozen empty tables, and we think, oh, they're just trying to make themselves seem more important by making people wait.
Correct, but they don't have
No,
the staff.
they don't have waitresses and waiters and servers
100%.
and people to serve it. And that's industry-wide. It's not just restaurants, it's industry-wide. It's in every industry.
Even in our industry, it's hard to get people.
And it's, I mean,
You don't just go and say, hey, when I grow up, I want to be an expediter.
yeah. But getting somebody to come into an office 5 days a week is impossible,
Impossible.
in every industry. And COVID accelerated something that was going to happen anyway.
Right.
But now living in Williamsburg or living in Manhattan is very expensive. You can live in North Carolina for half the cost of living and do the exact same job and make the same money with a better quality of life.
My son-
Why are you going to do it here?
My son has a place up in Trumbull, Connecticut. He works for an Israeli company, media company, and he does product analysis, projected sales. People all over the world. Yeah. He never has to go to Israel. The American portion of their business is in San Francisco, Charlotte, and New York. They do everything on Zoom.
I'll tell you a story, and you can cut it out if it gets boring.
No.
But I'll tell you a story. My wife and I and my daughter, we were in San Juan Island, which is north of Washington State. You have to take a seaplane to get there. And we're sitting at a restaurant, and there's only 2 taxis on the whole island. There's no Uber. Both taxi drivers have COVID, so we have no way to get the 15-minute ride back to our hotel. So we're talking to the waiter, our waitress actually, and she has a name tag that says where she's from, like they do that in the restaurants. She's from Miami, and we start talking to her. And she says, well, my husband works here too. When he gets off shift, he'll drive you back. It was our only way back, so we took the ride from the stranger.
Of course. Awesome.
And we're driving back, and she was lovely, and she was smart. You could just tell this was a really smart person. And we're talking to her husband, and he's just as smart, probably in their 30s. And they tell us the story that during COVID, he was a logistics manager for a shipping company, college-educated, smart guy. She worked for a real estate company, not real estate sales, but she was somewhat of an
back
executive.
office, whatever.
During COVID, offices closed. Somebody had given them a camper for their wedding. So they took the camper, they packed it up, they drove to like Georgia, and they were doing the work from a lake with Wi-Fi. They literally were sitting there. COVID ends, they get called back to the office. They're there for a couple of months, and they look at each other and go, what
What
are
are
we
we
doing?
doing? Yeah.
Why are we sitting here in a suit and tie in this office? They quit their jobs. They trade in the small camper for an RV. They drive across the country. The two of them now spend their summers working at this restaurant. They make enough money, and they live on the property in their RV. They've saved enough money. They did the research on the best places to own Airbnbs and the best revenue. They've put all of their money into Airbnbs. They make enough money now that they work at this restaurant during the summer.
Because they enjoy it.
Because they enjoy it. They love talking to people. They're like
Right.
you. They could talk to people all day long. And they travel 6 months out of the year. They put the camper in storage.
And
And
that's
they're
what's
making more
changed.
money than they ever could have made in that office in Miami. Once you give people that opportunity, they're not coming back.
Correct. And part of that is because, you know, we talk architecture, and somehow, some way, everything we're talking about affects architecture.
100%. Everything we're talking about affects what I do.
Exactly, and affects what we do. So you say, okay, so Mark so far has been gloom and doom. Nursing homes have all this brick and mortar, and they're half full. So they don't need more square footage, which means there's less designing, there's more repurposing, right? And we're going to get back to that. Second thing is, I gave you an example of my children. You gave me an example of a couple in Washington, that the world has become a me first business world, and employers have understand that if they want top quality talent, they can't be set in their ways that you must come to the office, you must do this, because the must thing will put you out of business.
Yep.
The must thing puts you out of business. So what we're seeing on our end, Mark, is we get calls for healthcare, we get calls for nursing homes, we get calls for a lot of dialysis centers and things like that. The dialysis center world is expanding.
Yep.
They need more space. More and more people, unfortunately, have to deal with a very critical disease, and they need square footage. But all the other things is they come to us and say, we have all this square footage, we need to repurpose it because the way we designed it 15 years ago is not working. So they're not looking to add the new building or buy the new building. They're coming to us like you and saying, hey, we got this. Could you do a code review? If we take this and this, before we go to an architect, does the code allow us to do it, and will the city allow it? That's all they want to know. They don't want us to design anything. But so to me, I think that in the nursing home world, assisted living, medical offices, even today, our medical office, I'm living up in the country right now while we're transitioning into a new place. And when I'm not feeling good, my doctor's known me for 30 years. Sisto, just get on FaceTime. Tell me what you're
So
feeling.
I'll give you an example of that. So we're doing a 10,000 square foot clinic out on Long Island, not for profit, what's called an Article 28 clinic, where they take Medicare. We coincidentally had designed this facility for another not
Client
for
before.
profit almost 30 years ago. This client subleases it from them, the rent is up, and we are completely redesigning it based upon exactly what you're saying. So a couple of things happened during COVID. Number one, in the medical world, they won't have people sitting in the waiting room next to each other anymore. You come in, they put you in a room, which means I need more rooms to put people in. The second thing is there's a lot more telehealth. So now I need to have office space, phone booth space for
Quiet.
the doctor, quiet space for the doctor to do telehealth appointments. I need separate waiting rooms so when people are waiting, they're not waiting next to other people. The entire design of medical facilities
what-
has changed drastically.
Exactly.
So we're repurposing, we're re-envisioning, and the biggest piece is flexibility.
Flexibility.
Because you can't make it so specialized that when there's a new program or something changes or another pandemic, it doesn't work anymore. So everything we're doing has to be adaptable, has to be flexible. And to go back to what you said about the office space and whether it's office space clinics, you need to create an environment that people want to come to.
Correct.
You're not going to put people in a cubicle and a windowless cubicle anymore.
No.
If you don't have open space, if you don't have outdoor space, if you don't have greenery, if you don't have natural light, if you're not giving them good food, they're not going to show up.
Well,
if they are going to come to the office, they're going to go to the company that has all of that.
Right, and that position is very simple because we have clients that own buildings a long time in Manhattan, and they have Class C buildings, and they can't rent them.
Nope.
Only people that are renting them are the B buildings that got repurposed or the A's that are new.
And it's the same thing in the residential world, not just corporate, commercial, but residential. the older buildings that have no amenity space can't compete with the new buildings that have gyms and basketball courts and rooftop. It can't work.
You know, it was funny. We do quite a few office to residential conversions, and we deem ourselves as subject matter experts. We have a really good staff here who knows the multiple dwelling. Dom and Sergio have known it their entire career, like me. Sergio is been reading it for 40 years. And that book hasn't changed.
No.
So now they're in the process of trying to change it for the office to residential conversion. And I remember meeting a developer one time who said that office to residential conversion is not repurposing a building, but it's repurposing how people want and choose to live in New York City. And I was like,
It's true.
what is he talking about? And he was clear. He said, look, when we design a brand new building, we design a slab to slab at 9 feet with an 8'6" ceiling. He goes, now we're going to take this office building that has a 13-foot floor to floor, that had all this mechanical, that we take it all back.
Yep.
We give you these huge windows because we don't want to mess them up because they're so big. Yeah. He goes, now we have on the 14th floor, we used to have a chiller room. We make that the amenity space. They're not going in the basement to go work out. Now they're going to that. So he goes, it's not going to be for affordable living, but for people who want to live in New York City
people
with
means.
A completely different apartment lifestyle. This is the way to go.
100%. And another part of our business is designing high-end New York City apartments.
Yes.
And we just did 2. One was a 4-bedroom, one was a 5-bedroom. 2 of the bedrooms are home offices for the husband and wife.
Right.
Because even though they live in New York City and their office is in New York City, they're still doing work from home.
Sure.
And they're not going to do it at the kitchen table anymore. They want an office. They want a private place to take Zoom calls. And they're buying bigger apartments to take that space for home offices, for home gyms, wine cellars. We're doing all of it because people are living differently than they used to.
And a perfect example is, we sold our place. We bought a small 1-story ranch. It's only about 1,600 square feet. Great house. Has a 2-car, detached, 1950s garage. It's going to be my office. My wife's home, her girlfriends are over, the dogs are running around. God willing, my grandkids will be over. I can separate myself and go there. So even in the suburbs, architecture is changing.
1,000%. I mean, we have a 3-bedroom apartment on the Upper East Side. Both my kids are older and moved out. We turn one room into my office, and then the other room is a guest room / my wife's office.
Right.
She's a psychologist. A lot of her patients are still on Zoom. They prefer that. And now she has a place to do it. My
daughter, she's a psychologist. Also, she runs her office. Like 90% of her clients are women between the ages of 22 and 35. They're not driving to see her.
Well, no, because when they had to see her, if they didn't live where she works, like my wife's in the city, it was a half a day for a 50-minute appointment.
Right.
Now they can go into their private office or their bedroom, flip on their camera, and they feel like they're getting just as good, if not better, care than they were before.
And when they leave, if they move to Washington State or they move to North Carolina, they didn't have to go find a new therapist.
Nope.
It's a wonderful world. But on this show, we talk about the impact of it. More and more people are spending time in their apartment. Before, what's the big deal? You have an apartment. You go to work, you come home, you don't even cook dinner. You just sleep.
You're not even there when the sun is out. It doesn't matter.
Now the difference is that they are spending more time. And how good the elevator is important. How clean the stairs are important. How safe is my building? How is the air conditioning system, all of these things before people, it's all part of living. This is like, I remember as a kid, we used to go to an apartment building. You knew what Mary was making on the 5th floor and you lived on the 6th floor, right? It's just because there was terrible exhaust. Now.
People spent a year at home during the work week and they realized all the downsides that they didn't even know they had.
Correct.
But everything you're talking about for you and for me is change. And change for us is good.
Absolutely. The change in any business allows us to look at things differently. But the biggest thing is that you have to market yourself and you have to be adaptable to that. So if your firm isn't on that cutting edge that understands that a family of 2 still wants 4 bedrooms now, you can't go to them and say, "Hey, wait a second, you're a husband and wife. Why are you buying a 4-bedroom?" No, they're telling you what they want, and you got to be able to design around
and what
that.
we do and what we tell people is the first thing we do. It doesn't matter if it's a healthcare client, residential, commercial, education. First thing we do is listen, because everybody's different. We can't make the assumption that everybody needs the same home or everybody needs the same office or the same healthcare institution. So we listen to what their needs are. We bring to the table our experience from working with other clients and what something that we did for someone may have
Work for
value
you
to
and may
somebody
not.
you not have thought about it.
Right.
But to us, it's always a collaboration. It's never, we're going to tell you what to do and how to do it.
Absolutely not.
We're going to give you ideas. We're going to listen to yours. If we think you're making a mistake, we'll tell you we think you're making a mistake and why. But ultimately, it's their mistake
your
to
decision.
make.
Right.
As
It's
long
your
as you're not
decision.
violating the code or doing something
Right.
that's unsafe, that's your decision to make. But you have to listen to people.
Oh, without a doubt. And you have to listen to the market.
Yeah.
And I think that today's market is more, we get more calls from colleges, schools, nursing homes about repurposing their space versus, hey, we want to build a new facility. If they're going to build something new, it's because what they got can't be repurposed because it's too expensive or it's so dilapidated, can't meet, the new local laws like Local Law 97 for energy. They can't meet the other requirements, so they're kind of forced into doing it. But as we go forward, Andrew Peters, he comes to BizDevel. Sure. Andrew is from, Curry and Brown, and he is an estimator. And one of the very first episodes of the show, we talked about his job being that he can't look backwards. He always needs to look forward because his job is to say, hey, Marc just called me. They want to build a new 10,000 square foot, healthcare facility for outpatient. We don't have any plans. How much is it a square foot? And his job is to go back and look at all the
historical
history,
data,
historical data, and then project, well, what's it really going to cost? So that Marc could go to his client and say, look, you want 10,000 square feet and you want it to kind of look like this. The average cost is about $2,000 a square foot, or it's $1,500, or it's $3,000. So they could figure out, are we fundraising it? Are we going to get grants? Are we going to do it privately? How do we make this vision we have happen? So his funny thing is the windshield is this big and the rearview mirror is this big because we're supposed to look forward. We're not supposed to look backwards. So here we are, in the fall of 2024. We've seen what's happening in the healthcare world. If you were to project one main thing that you think is going to happen in the next year in the architectural world of hospitals, healthcare, nursing homes, other than, and don't give me the standard life sciences. Yeah, everybody knows that because everyone's doing more and more research. But from the healthcare part, not the science part, what do you think the biggest thing in architecture is going to happen?
To me, it has to be adaptability and flexibility. We have to design for things that we don't know yet. Technology has drastically changed the world.
Do you remember when MRIs came out? We were tearing walls apart.
And if you just look at what's happened in the last 10, 15 years, what we do now and what we did then, and not just that, the careers that go with it that didn't exist 10 years ago, but technology is virtual reality and AI is going to drastically change everything about healthcare providers and the information that patients have and what's done with them. And the spaces that are going to be needed when you talk about the physical spaces
different.
that we create, that you create, are going to be completely different, but we don't know what that is.
Right.
So to the greatest extent possible, we need to design for the unknown because it is so expensive. You're talking about thousands of dollars a square foot to build something that could be obsolete in 5 years because somebody's going to invent a new
ROI
piece of,
on it.
Right. There's going to be a new piece of technology that completely eliminates the need for that space. So how do we think about that? And I don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers.
Right.
But at least it's got to be in your mind of, what can I do here to make this last as long as possible?
Right, and that's part of the job as an architect. That's part of having that vision. And when you look, you could see it like on our end, years ago, they would write a C of O in a nursing home, and they would write soil linen room.
Yeah.
They would write mechanical room. They would write boiler room. They would name every room.
Yep.
Well, 30 years later, we go to the building department and say, look, we want to take that soil linen room and we want to make it a little office. Oh, you got to get a new C of O.
Right.
So you're telling the nursing home to hire an architect, go and spend thousands and thousands of dollars, plus
And cure all the violations you don't even know you have.
besides that, close out all the old, close this out, do this, do that, and you're tacking on a couple of $100,000 onto the project when they wanted to spend $30,000 to refit one office because there's a new program that they need a director for.
Right.
So you're right. What they thought was going to be grandeur in the 70s and 80s has now become nothing but a headache because they pigeonhole themselves. And I think in any part of architecture, not just healthcare, in any of them, retail spaces, they want them smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
They don't want big space
Well,
no
I mean,
more.
retail, and we do retail work, and retail, the brick and mortar retail has changed because most of that you can buy online, and people enjoy buying it online. So those spaces are now being filled by new businesses, experiential retail that you can't buy online.
Correct.
Which now, for us, is exciting. For you, is exciting. It's new opportunities. It's new ideas.
Right.
It's repurposing, and whether it's turning the shopping mall into pickleball courts,
Right.
or IV
We just
infusion
did
labs,
that in Stanford.
whatever
Right.
whatever it is, that is creativity that you and I, that's what we do.
Without a doubt. Well, Marc, this was really, really
This was great.
enjoyable. And I always thank every one of my guests for taking time out of their busy schedule because we are working. We do have a lot of things to do. But to me, unselfishness and being able to come and spend some time and talk to my guests and tell them your side of what's happening today, that's what this show is really all about. And you might be right, you might be wrong, I might be right, but we give our perspective. And I think that's really what makes the show a success. And, it's a pleasure to hear that 3 generations is still practicing and shaping what New York City looks like. Because if I'm sure you do the same thing I do with my kids and they get tired of it, we'll walk down the street. We worked on that building, and we did it. And I'll never forget. Sheldon Lobel used to say, my kids never get tired of me telling them that I worked on this building. He goes, the reason they never got tired of it because they didn't have a chance to say no. And he was right. And I know you're proud of what your grandfather probably completed, what your dad and now you and your brother and your sister are putting those same fingerprints on our history of architecture in New York. So God bless the 3 of you and continue the great work. And we'll have you back in a year, and you're going to tell us a little bit about AI and design in the future.
I'm looking forward to it. We've been working together 30 years. We'll work together another 30 years.
That's awesome.
Thank you, buddy.
God bless you.